Notebook number 2, number 8. Two crocodiles wearing shiny black, long-haired mink coats walked into a shop, outside of which hung a small hand-lettered pine placard that read Lacoste, the crocodile label, imported clothing and accessories. They began stroking a dark blonde mink coat in the shop. They couldn't bear to let go of it, as if they, since their genders remain unknown, crocodiles all take the same form of address for the purpose of efficient communication, were the only ones whom the coat flattered. But the crocodiles weren't eager to expose themselves. They didn't have the audacity to walk up to the counter to ask the shopkeeper to show them a coat, for then they'd have to remove their own coats, wearing it all for everyone to see. If such a thing were to occur indeed, what would the shopkeeper say? "Oh, you're a crocodile." This shopkeeper had seen crocodiles before. "Robbery, eh? Well, I already paid for security. This shopkeeper only wants to make a buck. You're too small, it won't work." This shopkeeper is an expert, someone with ideas and advice. No one really knows what there is to see when crocodiles throw open their coats. No crocodiles had ever entered the Lacoste store and actually tossed off their coat. These two were simply stroking a mink coat, nothing more. Did they do it because they liked the coat, or were they stroking it over and over for sheer pleasure? Who really knew? The average person wouldn't be able to spot a crocodile. Junior and senior high school students were a dependable audience for crocodile news. After finishing cram school, they would watch the TTV World News broadcast as they ate dinner. College students were the most indifferent age group, having drifted away from newspapers and news programs so as not to be associated with crocodiles. But according to public opinion polls, this demographic had become the most infiltrated by them. Those 40 and up reacted to the storm of controversy surrounding crocodiles like archaeologists to the discovery of a precursor to the Neanderthal man. White-collar office workers claimed they only paid attention to legislative battles and stock prices. Blue-collar workers swore off any of that garbage that wasn't a TV show or a movie, but secretly they stood up at the newsstands perusing magazines like Scoop Weekly and Inside, while white-collar workers simply bought the magazines and took them home. Thus, this demographic had opportunities to supplement their archaeological research. The crocodiles thought, what was everyone after, anyhow? If that many people secretly liked them, that'd be totally embarrassing. 9. Have you seen Chronicle of a Death Foretold? I asked her. It's a film. At the time, there wasn't much sweetness between her and me. On top of that, she wasn't exactly your basic pretty girl. It'd take a lifetime to dispel the lingering specter of my wrongdoings. She nodded and said she had. What'd you think? I asked. Well, she said, it just so happens that I can't bring myself to recount this one part that makes me so mad just thinking about it that I want to punch something. She shook her head, saying she didn't want to talk about it. That meant her emotions were so precious that she didn't want to ruin something by trying to articulate her feelings about it. Because I had moved on with my life, she offered me only the dregs of reconciliation, a cup of black coffee with no sugar, just cream on the side. I'd taken a sip of each, and I have to say, I preferred the coffee. The cream agreed with me about as much as she did. I asked her to think about how to put it into words and tell me what she thought the next day. The male protagonist searches everywhere for the woman of his dreams. After selecting the female protagonist with only a glance, he racks his brain thinking of ways to lavish his riches on her before eventually taking her as his bride. But on their wedding night, he discovers that his bride isn't a virgin. That evening, the half-undressed sobbing bride is sent back, and so the bride's family takes her in, and every day she sends him a letter. In the final scene, the male protagonist, carrying an enormous sack of letters, enters the courtyard, where the female lead awaits him. The journey is littered with letters. She wanted me to tell her the story from the very beginning, so that she could enjoy the ride all over again. This is a metaphor. I can drone on and on about my own love story, which takes place in the short distance between Wenzo Street and campus. Or I can throw in a few samples a la hip-hop or reggae. These ready-made serve as interludes to keep you from getting sick of the monotonous commute back and forth between these same two locations again and again. Shui Ling didn't know it, but when I saw Chronicle of a Death Foretold and discovered that the bride wasn't a virgin, I followed in the groom's footsteps. The next day, I slept for 20 hours straight. then got up and wrote her a hateful breakup letter. It was around 6 in the evening. I wrote facing the window, clouds racing across the open sky like a bay horse in full gallop. I was halfway done when the door buzzer rang. I opened the red metal door. Shui Ling was slumped right next to it. She just sat there, withered. I dragged her over to the stairs and sat beside her, though there wasn't really room for two. She insisted that she didn't want to come in. I shut the door behind us. At the rehearsal for the Chinese Lit department's public reading, she'd made a complete fool of herself and gotten scolded. For someone like her who avoided attention like the plague, it was a major humiliation. She wasn't handling it so well, didn't utter a word about her feelings, even though I would have given my life to kiss those downcast eyes and lick away those tears. I can't recall what I said, but I eventually got her to smile. I just so happened to have the gifts of a clown. I knew there was no way I could protect her from the real world or from being yanked around by the tail. That said, I'd still step in and save her regardless. I was such a shitty human being. Why not take advantage of her state of disgrace and kick her while she was down? No matter what kind of trouble she was in, I'd run over in an instant to toss a rope down and pull her back to safety. Now that I'd shown myself to be blindly at her beck and call, she was beaming again, but my malice had already reignited. I could have put an end to my ways that night, instead of treating her like I did. The serial killer in me should have surrendered. I walked her to the number 74 bus stop, cracking jokes the whole way. I squinted, and the moment I caught sight of the number 74 bus in the distance, I said nonchalantly, "I was just in the middle of writing you the letter in which I dump you, and in a little while, I'm going to go back and finish it so I can run over to your place in the middle of the night and drop it in your mailbox." A few seconds passed, then she recovered. "That won't be necessary," she said, and she boarded the bus as if nothing had happened. Later she said that she was ready to turn around and storm off right then and there. As for her cool, collected display of superhuman willpower, it was fueled by a desire for revenge. It was already a day too late for her to tell me about Chronicle of a Death Foretold. Number 10. First thing in the morning, I put the letter in her mailbox, as if a burden had been lifted, and then dumped into the ocean. My body felt lighter. The letter said that our relationship was over. It was quickly returned unopened, along with a messily scrawled letter that clearly displayed her bitter contempt, as it had obviously been written in a shaky hand. These were the events of April 1988. For about a month, I explored a new dimension of guilt, in which I was swiftly liberated from her influence, and I passed my days alone, silently and uneventfully. 2 days before my birthday in May, I discovered a huge rose in the basket of my giant. No one was there. At 8 that evening, Shui Ling was back again, sitting on her bike downstairs. I said, "Today just happens to be moving day for me." She asked where I was moving to. I remained silent, saying nothing. In that incriminating tone of hers, she said, "I should be allowed to see you in the future, because in the past you told me that after we broke up, if could I take it for a month, then I'd be able to deal with it, but I've already taken it for a month, and I'm suffering all the same." Like a cheerful little blade of grass tossed about in the wind and rain, she had explained the entire basis of our relationship. She said if she could help me move. I shook my head cold-heartedly. She'd exhausted all her tricks and was slow to abandon her manipulative ways. It was almost midnight when she tried to lure me back to her place. In the darkness, I broke down into two selves, the real me, who was ready to sink my teeth greedily into her, and another me who was plotting cunningly how and when to make my escape. As if I could read her mind, I knew from her sticky sweet demeanor, with its implication that she wanted to fully give herself to me, that she'd gained a bit of new wisdom about me during that month. Never before had she used this kind of language. Its veneer was part of a veiled surprise attack on me, one which she herself didn't completely comprehend. Her newfound maturity allowed her to see my final ploy as a mere impasse, but to me her words had struck a fatal blow, not unlike shoving a red-hot piece of wire up a monkey's ass. It was as if she had ever so lightly brushed up against the edge of a tooth of mine that had been aching unbearably. What had once been a vague yet screamingly sexual taboo was now my downfall. In the end, I saw myself with perfect clarity. I had been split in two by some otherworldly force. I was an elusive, two-headed hydra, each head with its own mind. I heard the roar of the beast within me. The question was, which of the two heads was it coming from? Having come face to face with the real culprit behind my fear, I had a chance to settle the score once and for all. At 5 a.m, as this woman was on her knees, clinging to my legs, begging me not to leave her, I shook myself free. It was not unlike casually bundling up a severed limb. Then, with my tail between my legs, I fled. 11. Fled and forgot. That's how the story ends. I left Wenzo Street at the end of May 1988. That was my own chronicle of a death foretold. The drama that was my freshman year had concluded its final act. So what can I say? Was I angry, regretful, filled with self-loathing? I had to get over my feelings and move on already. It was like drowning in a vat of black tar, the victim of a slow death by suffocation. Best not to let out so much as a fart, since you're not only trapped with your own stink but the tar might overflow. I don't know how other people endure the violence and cruelty they encounter throughout their lives. There's no way to judge whether fate is playing favorites when it doles out physical disability, murder, and rape, or you're hauled off to the concentration camp. All I know is that I was forced into a corner, and so I violated myself in order to ward off the threat of being violated. I had to sacrifice the real living, breathing her. To me, she represented beauty in its highest form, and I went and treated her like a piece of meat. It was a mess of my own making, the product of my own savagery and barbarism. But what else was I supposed to do? No matter what, Shui Ling, I'll always feel your absence. From now on, for the rest of my life, I have to change my ways and pay the prices for the crimes I committed as an 18-year-old. As long as I'm alive and able, I won't stop talking about humanity and all of its fears. End of notebook number 2.